Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Anaheim Planning Commission of September 9th, 2024. My name is Christopher Walker, Chairperson of the Anaheim Planning Commission. As a reminder, the Planning Commission meetings are now broadcast on all our channels, including on the web and Anaheim TV Channel 3. The first order of business is to salute our flag. Commissioner Tran Martin will lead us in that.
Thank you. If you're able, please rise and join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is to, roll call. Next, I will ask the Planning Commission Secretary to take a verbal roll call of all planning commissioners.
Chair Walker. Chair Crane.
Present.
Commissioner Lieberman.
Here.
Commissioner Perez.
Here.
Commissioner Tran Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Castro. Here. Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. As you guys may noticed or have heard, the air conditioner was not working until just before the meeting started. So we have chairs out in the lobby if you need to cool down, because this probably won't cool completely. All of the hearing is going to be broadcast out in the lobby. So feel free, if you like, to go out there and view it out there. If you would please silence your electronic communication devices so that we don't disrupt the proceeding, we would appreciate that. The doors at the back of the room are automatic. They open when you get close to them, and they don't close until you walk down the hall. Please move away from the automatic doors to allow them to close. Today, we have an informational workshop on our agenda and no public hearing items. The workshop is on the city's Know Your Way program and was requested by the Planning Commission. For those of you in attendance to speak about a specific project, we would ask that you please hold those comments to the public hearing for that specific project. Should you wish to provide comment on the Know Your Way program, please complete a white speaker card and give it to staff if you have not already done so. The cards can be found on the table at the entrance. First, before the workshop, we will provide an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Is there anyone here to speak at this time? Seeing no one, we will move to the workshop. I will now begin the workshop and ask for staff presentation. Please note that this is an informative workshop and no decisions will be made this evening. Again, as a reminder, the commission and the public, we are here to learn about the Know Your Way program, and discussion and comments should not be addressed to a specific project.
Good evening, Chair Walker and Commissioners. I am Chief Communications Officer Mike Lister. I'm joined by Anaheim Fire and Rescue Chief Pat Russell, Anaheim Police Lieutenant Rich La Rochelle, and our city's traffic engineer, Raphael Cobian. The team before you tonight was instrumental in the development of Know Your Way in 2018. Given the nature of tonight's presentation, I would like to take a moment and say that our thoughts are with everyone battling the airport fire, which is about 25 miles to the southeast of us near Rancho Santa Margarita. And while not an immediate threat to Anaheim, it is a reminder of the importance of Know Your Way and to be fire alert and ready. For tonight's workshop, we will go over Know Your Way in detail, but first we would like to start with an overview of our city's preparedness, our responsiveness, and recent fire incidents that have created a foundation for Know Your Way, which we will go over in detail. But first, I would like to turn to Chief Russell for an overview of the fire-related items. Chief Russell?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon. I'm going to go over just a very quick overview and talk about some significant fire history that we've had here that's affected us in Anaheim, and I'll be quick, I promise. So first of all, just a quick snapshot of our department overview, where we currently sit with out of 11 fire stations, 11 engine companies, 6 truck companies, 2 squads, 9 ambulances, and 2 battalions, and we cross-staff several pieces of wildland fire equipment. Wanted to understand the fire behavior, just a real quick refresher. We've all heard of the fire triangle, and there's a picture there. Traditionally, when we talk about wildfire spread and progression, there's 3 things that drive wildfire: the topography, the hills, the valleys, the drainages, the weather, and the fuel. Topography pretty much is you see what you see. You know, a hill is a hill every year, doesn't really change a whole lot. The weather, which the side effect of our weather environment predominantly for wildfire is the wind, the direction, the speed, that type of stuff can be caused by many different weather patterns. So that's the one that's our X factor, our most challenging one. I'm going to focus a little bit on the fuel component because that's the one we can have some input on. We refer to the fire as either it's in alignment or it's out of alignment. When we discuss in alignment, at least 2 of those factors between topography, weather, and fuel, at least 2 of them are driving the fire. So fuel, that's the one that we concentrate on quite a bit. And for simplistic here, so I don't take too much time, I'm just going to talk quickly about the age of the fuel class and the continuity. So to understand, here in Anaheim, we have the traditional Southern California fuel models, or what we call 1-hour and 10-hour fuels. That's your brush, like your chaparral, your chamise, your coastal sage is a typical example of that, and then your seasonal grass, like the mustard grass, like you see all over out there. One of our challenges with that fuel is there's a process in that that's called dieback, and interestingly enough, the coastal sage and chaparral is designed to be about a 20-year fuel model, and it's designed to actually be burned off. And interestingly, the seeds in the brush are germinated by temperature, so it's designed to burn, crack the seedlings, and restart the growth purpose. So when we refer to dieback, if you look at that brush every year after a good rainstorm and through our traditional summer drying, you'll see more and more of that brush. If you were to look at it over years to come, it would be dead, then a little bit more the next year and the next year, and then at around the 20-year period, it's designed to go away. Now, obviously, that's influenced by drought conditions, heavier rain seasons, that kind of stuff, but traditionally, that's what it's on. The other type of fuel that we see that challenges us is the ornamental vegetation, and that's like your eucalyptus trees, sumac, avocado trees. They are very nice around structures, and they don't take a lot of water. That's how they're designed. If you look at that fuel in the winter, it's very porous, it's absorbing moisture, and then when it gets into the heat of the sun, it seals it with an oil surfactant to keep the moisture in the trees or in that vegetation. But obviously when it catches on fire, it's much more challenging because of that oil surfactant in it. So that's kind of the 2 really down and dirty, the kind of quick examples of the fuel that we're dealing with. And then the other challenge is the continuity of fuel. How much fuel is available to burn in the event that a brush fire, vegetation fire was to start? So here's an example of a wind-driven fire. You can see where it's being pushed and the smoke column will follow, and you see some of the slope where it gets in and has an influence on it, as well as the dried grass there, just kind of for a memory jogger for you. So what can we do in Anaheim? We do an aggressive program of fuel reduction or fuel modification, as we call it. As you see here on the left, we've been involved for several years with our GOAT program, which has been very successful for us, where we put them in certain areas and they chew the vegetation, and then we move them systematically to do that. The whole goal there is to reduce the fuel, which, number one, it's easier to suppress once we do get a fire in that area. And it's also, there's a less chance of a fire becoming established and growing with the reduction of fuel. The other tool that we use is the California Conservation Corps. Through our CAL FIRE agreement and contractor, we bring in hand crews to do fuel reduction as well. One of the things or go to the next page, please. I'm sorry, thank you. And you can see here a before and an after of down in the lower on the right there, where that's been grazed over by the goats, and then on the top where it's not. But this isn't an end-all be-all, because we have to monitor how much they graze, because one challenge can lead to another. Oftentimes what happens is you overgraze or you reduce fuel too much, and then when we do have rains, now we have the challenge of mudslides and hills sloughing off because they don't have that vegetation there to absorb that moisture and keep it intact. So other things we look at when we look at community risk reduction and what we do to prevent the fire or minimize the fire, we have now a full-time wildland fire inspector that does one-on-one consultations to come out and look at homes, look at HOAs and businesses, and make sure that they have that 100-foot clearance, that they have some of that brush that I talked about away from the structure, and some of those things to make their home or their business as fire hardened as it can be. Public outreach, we do quite a bit of public outreach. In fact, we have some later this month up at Station 10, where we have information for our public when they come up on a lot of this information to help communicate and educate our public as much as possible. And then I'm very excited about the first time in Anaheim, we're going to have a Firewise community, which is a national program that provides communities and neighborhoods with a collaborative framework to mitigate wildfire risk. The other leg of the triangle, so to speak, that we take very aggressively here in Anaheim is our wildfire training for our firefighters. We far surpass the minimum required state hours for our training to do that, which includes we train and do prescribed fire training and help out the Forest Service and CAL FIRE to get our folks as much experience as they can. And we send our overhead and our engines to other fires so they have that experience when the next time we have a fire here in Anaheim. We have several resources out on fires as we speak. Something that came out of the freeway complex was the development of the solar plan, which is now morphed into a training plan. So basically what that was, solar stands for the counties of San Bernardino, Orange, Los Angeles, and Riverside, and mostly that was a communication plan. One thing we realized on that fire, with all the different resources that responded to that fire and all the different agencies, we had trouble communicating with that. We've taken that several steps from there, and now it's they meet every 3 months to do training, to do tabletops, and to make sure that not only the communication, but everybody's incident attack plans, pre-fire plans, that we all have access to those to set us up for success right from the start. And then lastly, if we do get into suppressing the fire, some of the equipment that we've been very fortunate with supportive city staff and council to have at our fingertips is we have 1 water tender, 2 Type 6 engines, and 5 Type 3 engines that do respond on wildfires here in Anaheim and our neighboring jurisdictions. Anaheim also has the luxury of having 3 OES wildland apparatus. These are owned by the state of California. They're given to different departments to staff to send out on wildfire responses. Therefore, you keep your own apparatus at home. The other benefit to this program is we can use these here in our city anytime we need to, so it gives us additional equipment. So if you look at this picture here, you can see that's the east end of Anaheim that is considered by the CAL FIRE in the state as being in the very high fire hazard severity zone. That is dictated by the state with, they come out and evaluate that and make that determination on what areas are considered very high, high, medium, and so forth. So let's talk about some of the fires we've had over the years and the impact to Anaheim. 2008, we had the Freeway Complex fire. That fire was started actually in Riverside County, outside of Corona off the 91 freeway. Santa Ana wind conditions, 60-mile-an-hour wind was kind of set for it. The damage, 381 structures destroyed here in Anaheim. One multifamily was the Cascade Apartments. One single family, 13 single family homes damaged, and 8 single multifamilies were destroyed. The Canyon Fire in 2017 started in the city of Anaheim. Winds changed 3 times on us from the north, the east, and the west. Top wind speeds on that incident were 60 miles an hour. A little over 2,600 acres burned and 7 structures were damaged. A week later, the Canyon 2 fire again started in the city of Anaheim under Santa Ana wind conditions, 20-mile-an-hour winds. That fire went the other way towards Anaheim predominantly. A little over 9,000 acres was the acreage on that fire. 80 total structures were either damaged or destroyed. 15 of those structures were in the city of Anaheim. So this one, the reason this one's on there, which doesn't look that great compared to the ones I just showed you, here on the Windy Ridge Fire, 80 acres, didn't have a big significant wind push on it. On this one, as you can see, off the 241 there in our fire prominent corridor, but we were able to suppress that fire with our suppression equipment that we have and our response coordinated with City of Anaheim, CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, Orange County Fire. We're all send resources under that solar plan that I talked to you about, and we were able to pick that fire up and stop it. The goal in the state of California is to suppress 95% of the fires to 10 acres or less. 100-acre fire is considered a significant incident. This slide here shows from 2000 to present the fire history in Anaheim and the way the fires traditionally burned that affected Anaheim. We call this the signature of the fire. This is one thing that we're very fortunate to have. We don't want large fires, certainly we don't want another large vegetation fire, but under wind conditions, we get the signature of the fire that it probably is going to do the same thing that it's done in the past. Not 100% of the time, or not completely, but it gives us a good idea of where predicting that fire will hit the city or our city boundaries and where it will predominantly go under our biggest challenges under a Santa Ana wind condition. And you can see there the different fires. And with that, I'll close and take questions and turn it back over to Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Russell. That leads us to Know Your Way. Know Your Way is our evacuation and emergency preparedness plan for East Anaheim. It was developed in 2018 after Canyon Fire 2. It was developed by Anaheim Police, Anaheim Fire and Rescue, Public Works, and the city administration. It breaks East Anaheim down into 15 zones, which we'll explore in just a moment. The zones are numbered, and they're also named for familiar neighborhoods and landmarks, which make them easy for our residents to identify. Now, how it works, it aims to get residents out safely and quickly. We hope that everyone knows evacuation routes before an emergency. It allows for targeted and partial evacuations. And it calls for us to work with neighboring cities and agencies. So Caltrans, the California Highway Patrol, our friends in Yorba Linda and Orange, they know what we are doing and we know what they are doing. Critically, it calls for halting traffic into evacuation areas. This is something we need to stress to our community, that this is where we need your partnership. We need everyone in the hills to have a family emergency plan and to know what to do in an evacuation. Because as we learned from Canyon Fire 2, we do need to stop traffic coming into an evacuation area so we can get everybody out of harm's way safely. So we need everyone to be thinking about what to do with young children, elderly loved ones, pets, horses, if you might be at work when an evacuation is called. And that's what really makes Know Your Way a partnership with our community, because our goal is to limit congestion on evacuation routes, which we did see during Canyon Fire 2. Now, what to expect with Know Your Way? If we were to call for evacuations, you would see police in neighborhoods, patrol cars with lights, loudspeakers. You would get texts on your phone, emergency texts. You would see urgent social media messages from the city of Anaheim. And we would also work with television and other media to get information to our community. Now, in broad terms, Know Your Way calls for evacuating to the west, and this is common sense. We know that to the east of our communities, including the Cleveland National Forest, we have hundreds of thousands of acres of wildland. So generally, the threat will come from the east. But given that, there can be times where somebody may go east for a short period of time and go north to ultimately go west. An example of this may be traveling east down Santa Ana Canyon to Weir Canyon to get on the 91 freeway to go west. So there are variances within the plan, but generally we will be evacuating in a westerly direction. Know Your Way relies on streets that we are all familiar with: Weir Canyon, Santa Ana Canyon, Serrano Avenue, among many others. And it also relies upon the westbound 91 freeway as a major evacuation route. And again, off-ramps and streets will be closed to incoming traffic. And that is, again, so we can evacuate those we need to get them out of harm's way without an influx of vehicles coming in. We need everyone to know primary and secondary routes out of your neighborhood. And for many neighborhoods, there might be 2 or 3 ways out. We know there are others where there may be only one, but also you need to consider, might you go west on that one direction you have out, or might you go east? Watch for police and traffic control. We will be there in an evacuation. Police will be the first thing you see, but you might also see fire vehicles and public works vehicles, all helping to assist with an evacuation. We will coordinate with other agencies and with schools on evacuations. Now, it's very important to stress that Know Your Way is an overarching plan for us. There is a lot of applicability for real-life situations, but every incident is unique and every situation is subject to change. And so we have to know that this is a living, breathing, flexible document, and that in any incident, there may be something you encounter that might be different from what you might see in Know Your Way. But overall, it is a critical and important guide and planning tool for our community. Now, Know Your Way is really built on lessons learned from Canyon Fire 2. And it is really the exact opposite of what we saw in Canyon Fire 2. Our community with us here tonight or watching, many of them may have lived through Canyon Fire 2, where we saw congested evacuations, sometimes 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. So Know Your Way really tries to build on the lessons learned and is the exact opposite of what we had during Canyon Fire 2. For Canyon Fire 2, there were no zones. We saw a mass evacuation out of an abundance of caution of everybody east of Serrano Avenue. We saw very well-intended self-evacuations, and we saw traffic in all directions. The picture we're seeing here is Serrano Avenue. And it's actually what you don't want to see in an evacuation. We have people coming into Anaheim Hills from Orange, and we have people leaving Anaheim Hills going into Orange. We don't want to see this sort of two-way traffic flow. There were no road closures limiting traffic coming into evacuation areas, and there could have been certainly better coordination with other agencies. Now, I do want to pause and talk about evacuations. Even with Canyon Fire 2, which will take a much more, with Know Your Way, which will take a much more targeted approach, whenever you try and evacuate a large amount of people, you can see congestion. We see this in Florida with hurricanes. We see it in the Northeast with blizzards. Anytime you're moving a lot of people, there will be congestion. The important thing to know is that while we will try our best to limit that congestion, people very much will be safer, even in congestion on a Weir Canyon or Serrano, than they may be at the edge of our wildland interface with flames approaching them. So that's the important thing to recognize. And we also have to pause and recognize that during Canyon Fire 2, thankfully, no one died. Everyone got out safely. It took a while, but they got out safely. And this was at a time when across our state, we were seeing other wildfires that sadly claimed many lives, including during evacuations. So here are the 15 zones of Know Your Way. And to the right or to the east, we have zones 1, 2, and 3, which if we recall the chief's severe fire risk map, these zones would fall in that area. We also have to the left or to the west of Anaheim Hills, we have zones 12, zones 14, and zones 15, where, while not free from risk, have a different risk profile than the zones right along what we refer to as the wildland interface. Now, it really helps to take a look at these zones overlaid on an aerial map. You can see how zones 1, 2, and 3 are right there along all that acreage of open space near the 241, and that's why knowing your zone is so important. There is a different risk profile in zones 1, 2, and 3 than there are in other areas. Zones 1, 2, and 3 are the front line. And again, there are risks in every zone. And Know Your Way is not just for wildfires. It could also be used in earthquakes or debris flows. But knowing your zone really helps to know the unique risk that you may face in that particular zone. Now, while we refer to them as numbers, they do have numbers that correspond to neighborhoods and landmarks that our residents will be familiar with. Neighborhoods such as Peralta Hills, Oak Canyon, or Yorba Regional Park. This is an easy way for our residents to identify their zone by names they will be familiar with. Now, at anaheim.net/knowyourway, we have flyers available for every zone. Here we happen to show flyers for Zone 1, Running Springs, and Zone 2 for Ronald Reagan Park that really show detailed views of the neighborhoods and streets within these zones. We have descriptions of the zones, and we also have a larger map showing where these particular zones fall within the context of Anaheim Hills. Now, why this is important is because the zones of Know Your Way allow us to do targeted evacuations. So remember Canyon Fire 2, well-intended, but the reality is we over-evacuated out of an abundance of caution. And that's what resulted in congestion. So here is a hypothetical example of Zone 1 Running Springs, where we could call for an evacuation of the homes to the most east within this particular zone, those right at the potential fire's edge. And for the other streets within this zone, we would ask those families to stay in place and to stay alert and to stay ready to go. But the reality is these other homes may face the highest, most immediate risk, and we would do a priority evacuation of them first that allows us to move hundreds of vehicles at one time rather than thousands, because the risk may not be the same for the other streets within this zone. And again, the goal is to minimize the evacuation congestion that we saw during Canyon Fire 2. Now, how do we share information about Know Your Way? Since its inception in 2018, we have done regular stories in Anaheim Magazine, detailed feature stories, talking about zones, talking about the importance of Know Your Way. We do regular stories in the Anaheim City newsletter, including the one here shown that was just shared recently as we get near peak fire season. We do regular posts on social media that we will also share on the Anaheim Hills Buzz, which is a community forum within Facebook that is one of the best ways to reach our neighbors and friends out in Anaheim Hills. And then we will also be out in the community at events with a pop-up booth sharing details about Know Your Way. And then on our YouTube channel and on Anaheim TV, Channel 3, we have videos playing that go over Know Your Way and share all the important details with our community. So with that, we would invite everyone to go to anaheim.net/knowyourway and download the maps for your zone. Find out what zone you're in. And as you go about your daily life, think about evacuation routes, because really these are the same streets that you would take to go shopping, to take the kids to school, to go about errands in your neighborhood. These are all the same streets. So it's really a good way to get people thinking about evacuation, and there's nothing mysterious. It is all those same streets that we know, and we encourage everybody to go on there and learn more about Know Your Way. With that, we stand ready to share more information and to answer whatever questions the commission may have. But for now, we will turn it back to you, Chair Walker, for any questions of staff that you may have.
Thank you very much. Any commissioners have any questions? Any cards? Yo, go ahead.
In regards to the evacuating by streets in the same zones, how would you do that? So going back to your zone, I think it was zone 1 example, how would you differentiate the communication to the households that need to be evacuated and those that don't need to be evacuated?
Yes, and I'll bring in my colleagues where needed. But in any evacuation, it is boots on the ground is the first way people are going to hear about an evacuation. So you would see police cars going through those streets, literally sirens on, loudspeakers, and knocking on doors. But I will invite my colleague, Lieutenant La Rochelle, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, thank you. So to answer that question, when any incident happens, especially in a fire incident like this, we would be working with unified command with the fire department and the police department, and they would be telling us exactly where the fire is burning, how it's coming, how they plan to fight that fire, and what streets and houses they need evacuated. And then that information will be passed along from the battalion chief that's on scene to the watch commander who's on scene, and then we would pass it on to the officers that are out there and we'd have to go door to door if we had to. Like Mike said, we'd have to, get on the PA systems of the police cars, go up and down those streets, and we also have, reverse 911. We can call into residents. We can do the Anaheim alerts. There's several ways that we can kind of blast that information out and let them know that we need these particular streets or addresses evacuated.
And then from there, the communications team would help with broader support for those boots on the ground. We would do extensive communication, literally outlining which streets within a zone. The other homes that may not face the same immediate risk, we would share information with them. And also, I'd like to share that for those other homes, while we would be asking them to stay in place, it is because their risk may not be the same. There would be the risk of what you call spotting or ember cast, but we would expect to have Anaheim Fire and Rescue teams in those neighborhoods. They would be able to address any spot flare-ups that would develop that would protect those homes of the folks who would be staying in place for the time being.
Perfect, thank you. And then kind of as a follow-up to that question, and this is kind of like a worst-case scenario, let's say it happened today, Monday, it's 100, whatever degrees out today, and it happens at 10 a.m., and let's say people are off at work, and whether they have their kids or their elderly at home, I'm assuming that there's not a registry or a list of, hey, when you go on who's ever Miss Johnson, Mr. Johnson's home, hey, are they there? Oh, nope, no, they already left. So how, I guess, really in terms of, if the plan is to not have people come into the evacuation zones, how do people feel secure in making sure their most valuable people or their most valuable things got out of the way?
So that's been part of the education and marketing of this plan since 2018. We tried to talk to as many people as we can out there, and that's having that preparedness and plan before the emergency happens. I can tell you one thing, that we've never ever stopped an ambulance, code 3, at a road closure. So one idea that's out there is, if you have an elderly person that lives with you, have a contract set up with an ambulance company to come and pick them up. If you're not home, if you're not able to get to them, give them permission, get with your neighbors, work with your neighbors to, have somebody that can go and check on that person for you. Or if you're not there, they can get them out for you. Having a plan, thinking through the different, situations that might come is something that we encourage everybody to do now, before the incident happens. And it's knowing your way and having a plan and being prepared before the emergency happens.
No, that makes perfect sense, and I think just one recommendation. I know a lot of the neighborhoods are already cut up by precinct mailing codes that the postal office does. I think maybe doing a community neighborhood, hey, who's the designated house, the leader, or who's the retiree that has the time during the day. I think that would go a long ways, because I know people would be, clearly invested and interested in it.
If I may add to that, we encourage everybody to know your neighbors, work together as a team, work together with your block. It can be as simple as having pet carriers ready to go in your garage, so your neighbor can quickly grab those, grab your dogs, grab your cats, and help them get out easily as they are evacuating their home. So really, knowing your neighbors, working as a team in your neighborhood is a critical part of any emergency preparedness plan.
I had a question regarding the coordination that's anticipated with the schools. Obviously, a big factor during an evacuation and keeping people from coming in is dealing with parents who've got to retrieve their children. So what is envisioned here? What's happening?
I'll take that one again. So one of the things that we did first off in 2018 is realized we can't do it all by ourselves, and that we need all the stakeholders buy-in on this plan. So we actually worked with the school districts, primarily Orange Unified School District, and again, lessons learned. Prior to Canyon 2, the idea was Canyon High School was the rally point for all the elementary schools. Well, that's putting it right at ground zero. And we learned from that lesson that we can't do that again. So one of the things that we did is we met with Orange Unified School District, and we brought all them in, all the stakeholders in. We said, look, we can't have Canyon High School be the rally point for reunification. we need to pick a school that's outside of the area, that's still a school that's easy to get to and that sort of thing. So we identified Orange High School. We worked with Orange Unified School District and realized that Orange High School was actually the best bet for it because it's far enough away from the fire danger, but it's also close enough for the families and parents to get to. So one of the things that we worked with, and this is also working with Orange, the city of Orange, because they had Villa Park as their school. Well, again, for their area, that's putting ground zero again. So we worked together and said, hey, let's make sure that we take all of our students from all the schools to Orange High School. And that was something that was agreed upon by Orange Unified School District. And one of the other things we did is worked with them so that on high wind days that are potential for fires, we do pre-staging of buses. So that's one of the things that we've worked with the district. So it's a simple phone call. Hey, the wind's blowing pretty hard. Can we get the buses pre-staged? Sure, no problem. And what they do is they send buses to Anaheim Hills Elementary School and then Crescent Elementary School so that we have buses in the area to get to all the elementary schools to pull all those kids out. We've also worked tirelessly with El Rancho Charter School to talk about a lot of the, if the fire is not right in that general area, the best thing for them to do is to shelter in place until we can get buses into them and then bring the kids out of that area. And one of the things that we agreed with El Rancho at the time in 2018 was let's work with Vineyard Church and School over off La Palma and make that as the reunification location for El Rancho Charter School, because that would be one area that it's one way in, one way out, so it's a little bit trickier to get an evacuation out of there. So in an incident where it's not right there, if it's traditionally where the fires have been through the 241 corridor, we'd want them to shelter in place until we can get buses in there and police personnel, evacuate them out, get them over to Vineyard Church, and then have families reunify over there. And that's something that we've worked with them to put out through their communication methods to all their students and parents, and the same with the Orange Unified School District.
Thank you very much. I have one other quickie question. Can you explain what a battalion constitutes as opposed to a station? I don't know what a battalion is.
Yeah, so a battalion chief is in charge of part of the city, and the battalion is all the stations that is in that area. So basically, State College splits the city as far as Battalion 1 and Battalion 2, and their main job is to manage large multi-alarm or smaller incidents as far as command and control and coming up with the plan to mitigate that incident.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the assisted living communities in Anaheim Hills. Have you coordinated with them so they can educate their family members not to come into the area when there's a fire?
Early on in 2018, we did have some conversations with a lot of them, and those are some of the safest buildings to be in because they're at the highest level of the fire. I don't know what the exact words are for it.
Where the fire is going to impact.
Yeah, where the fire is going to impact and the fire standards, I guess, was what I'm trying to say. So it's safest really to be in one of those facilities. But we have spoken with them, and a lot of them have their own evacuation plans in place, and they have shuttles and buses and that sort of thing that are at their disposal if they needed to get out of those areas. And to my knowledge, we don't have any that are right in those zones of 1, 2, and 3, but we have identified the ones that were more in some of the other zones, and we have had conversations with them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the information. So my question is more so about in the event of an incident, as vehicles are trying to get through, I've never, very rarely am I on the 91, and it's a nice flow of traffic. So how, between the 91 street traffic that we have, what are the logistics of being able to manage free flow of traffic so that folks can evacuate safely?
And so we're looking at each other saying, hey, which one of us wants to take this one? Because the thing that we learned the most out of Canyon Fire 2 is what we need to do first is stop getting unnecessary cars to come in, right? The second we can do that, we have available capacity to get people out outside of the area, right? And if we have congestion outside of the area, that's going to be okay. Under an emergency situation, right, the primary purpose is just going to get people out. So with the 91 freeway, right, one of the first things we're going to do is shut off the off-ramps to the area. We don't want anybody getting off the 91 freeway coming into the area and clogging that area up. Santa Ana Canyon Road, as an example, we're going to stop everybody at Imperial Road. Nobody is going to be able to head eastbound on Santa Ana Canyon Road east of Imperial. And again, that now allows for that capacity. Same thing over at Weir. Serrano, that picture that you guys saw, right? That was a perfect example of everything, or a lot of the things that went wrong is we had people coming both ways on Serrano, right? So one of the things that we're going to do is we're not going to let anybody come in over the hill off of Serrano. So now we have all that additional capacity. So once we get those hard closures into place, right, that 91 freeway congestion isn't really going to affect us anymore. We've got all of this capacity in the area to use it at our disposal to get people out.
I just had a quick follow-up question with the schools. You'd mentioned that you'd coordinated with Orange Unified, but there are also some private schools in the area. Have you touched base with them as well?
We have, yes.
Any comments? So you see your names up here. There's 10 speakers. If you guys would line up based on the order, and number one, if you would come forward, Betty Farnsworth. Yeah, and if you guys want to speak on this, you can submit comments to the desk.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. One of the questions is the pictures that were taken, the before and after, that looked like the ridge at Deer Canyon Park. When were those taken? How old are those?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Generally, we don't answer questions in a workforce, but I understand your general comment, but workshop is not a
back and forth?
correct.
Okay. Anyway, so I'll make a statement. Those pictures look relatively older to me than the last time I was in that preserve. It's pretty overgrown. I appreciate all the work that they've done on doing the plan for the evacuation, the Know Your Way. But that was developed in 2018, and that's 6 years ago. So I just wonder if it's time for a revisit on that. I appreciate that the police and everybody wants to stop traffic. Maybe we need to consider opening that police substation so it's manned 24/7 instead of, I think it's 8 to 4, Monday through Friday now. Because in order for the police to be able to get up into the hills, if they're based out of central Anaheim, that might be a wee bit more difficult. And the biggest issue is the proposed development of SALT and the festival and the additional number of cars, people, children, people not knowing which way to go. That's going to have an extremely negative impact and risk to life and limb, very similar to Paradise, California. I think one of the things we need to remember, they showed the three main streets, Serrano, Weir, and Santa Ana Canyon, and it was mentioned that there's other main streets. Well, the only other main street that I know of for entrance and exit would be La Palma. Fairmont doesn't go over. There's no other thoroughfares within that part of Anaheim Hills. So I think we need to consider the evacuation plan, but keep in the back of our mind or in the front of our mind the additional amount of traffic and people with those proposed developments going through. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, you're next. I appreciate everyone lining up. If you see your name on the top 5 here, it goes down to Linda. Please line up. And just so you know, we're not considering any projects. So while you can state what you want to state, it may not get on the record as far as those projects, whereas if you state it during the open hearing for those projects, it'll get on the record. Go ahead, Julie. Thank you.
Hi. I have been trying to address this issue for over 5 years. I've lived in Anaheim Hills for over 50 years. It has grown amazingly, and I don't feel the infrastructure has kept up with it. I live right on Deer Canyon Park. We have electrical lines back there which present a problem for any water dropping. We are deficit in fire hydrants. We do not have enough. We are considered existing non-compliant. We have one way in and one way out to my neighborhood. If a fire truck comes up, we can't get down. If somebody gets in an accident, there are hundreds of people stuck in the loop. El Rancho uses the same exit. We all have that one exit onto Santa Ana Canyon Road that cannot handle all the traffic. I was on a Zoom meeting with 2 of the gentlemen sitting here and one sitting over there. All of these things were discussed. I also came down to City Hall when we had a former mayor, water engineer, fire chief, and city manager. And everybody has chosen to ignore a lot of the issues that we face. We are facing a shall we not mention project. It is going to kill these people sitting in this room. It's serious. We need to address this. My neighborhood is told to turn eastward into the oncoming fire. All the fires were to the east. My neighborhood is to go on Santa Ana Canyon Road to the east, right directly in the way of said project, to get on the freeway over there, which they're going to stop, which would be an improvement, I agree. There are things that have been done. I'm not saying nothing has been done. We've had the deer or the goats in the canyon, which has helped. We've had cleanup from the Conservation Corps. This is really serious. I've tried for years. It's gone on deaf ears. We don't have fire hydrants by me. If I have a fire in my kitchen, I can't put it out. My husband bought a pool hose with 350 feet of hose and a gas mask. Because if my home catches on fire, all my eucalyptus trees catch on fire, and it catches all these people on fire because I'm at the top. It's a problem. I appreciate you listening and really, really taking this very seriously, because I do every day, and I know my neighbors do, and I appreciate everybody coming and listening because it's very important to me. It's my life, and it matters to me. Thank you.
Dan?
My name is Dan Scanlon, and I'd like to begin by first commending these gentlemen. I'm very familiar with what they do. I own a aircraft modification company, and we put in fire tanks. We modify aerial firefighting tankers. So I know something about the business, and I know these people have done a remarkable job. You probably have heard of Colson, put their tanks in. So anyway, one of the problems that we have here is when you're doing aerial firefighting, when you're trying to put out a fire from the air to assist these people, the sweet spot for us is about 200 to 250 feet above the fire. That works real well when you're in a flat area. But when you're in a very hilly area, it's very difficult for the pilots and the airplanes to avoid all the obstacles and still be able to stay 200 feet above the ground. The area is just too irregular. So what we have to do instead of getting so close to the fire, we have to go higher. And when we go higher, yes, and when we do a drop of the fire retardant, it spreads out. It becomes more of a mist. So the higher we go, yes, the wider the area is that we can treat, but the less effective it is. So this particular area that we're talking about is very, very difficult for us to help these gentlemen with the aerial firefighting. So the major portion of the firefighting is going to have to come from these people, and your problem is you don't have very much access to where the fires are more likely to start. And so, we got access from the air, but we don't have the effectivity that you do. So it's going to be a team effort in all cases. The other problem is, or not really a problem, the other, I think, compliment I have to give these folks, during the last evacuation, which I was involved in, you're right, no one died, and I think that was a remarkable achievement on your part, and I want to thank you for that. Matter of fact, you folks parked your fire truck right in front of my house, and I was personally went out and thanked the firemen who were in front of my house. But as Julie just mentioned, you saw there was a tremendous problem with the evacuation as far as traffic. No one died. We appreciate that. We were given 15 minutes to get out of our house, and we did it. But the traffic was just, it was pretty bad. But since that fire, there's been a lot more building. There's a lot more people in the area.
Your time's up.
Okay, and they're planning on a lot more people. So I think we have to be very careful about how many high-density people we bring into this area.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Jason?
I have a short story and some comments to share. I will be very brief. They first noticed that the fire had returned at 3:30 p.m., the result of high winds and downed power lines. By 3:40 p.m., the bypass south of town was blocked by fire. The other roads out of town were clogged with traffic jams. Nothing was moving. Residents of the city began to flee in any way they could. Many were trapped in their cars and would soon face a horrifying choice: either die as their cars burned around them or leap over the seawall into the rough waves below. By 4 p.m., officers began directing people away from Front Street, stating it had already gotten too late. Officers were working to help people escape the neighborhood, at one point knocking down a fence to get people out. Pickup trucks were carting people out anyway and anywhere they could find them. The smoke was so thick, even if the road was clear, you couldn't see or breathe well enough to get to it. By the next morning, 1,270 acres of land would be destroyed, 2,200 businesses and homes were gone, and 102 people were dead. There was no warning. There was absolutely none, said Lynn Robinson. Just a few minutes of warning would have saved lives, many survivors said. If we needed like 10 minutes, we could have saved a lot of kids. We just needed 10 or 15-minute warning, said Nate Baird. These events I've just stated are real. They happened in August of 2023 in Lahaina, Hawaii. Lahaina has two major highways. One is a bypass and a highway. Anaheim Hills has Santa Ana Canyon Road, which is much narrower than either of those roads. If that road is inaccessible, you cannot easily get to Imperial or Serrano or Yorba Linda, located at the edges of our community. The current evacuation plan says it would take 3 hours and 6 minutes to evacuate Anaheim Hills in the event of an emergency. The Salt Development Project would add 24 minutes to that. The residents of Lahaina had anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes to figure out what was going on and get out of town. Anything after that was too late for many. We don't have 3 hours and 6 minutes. Anaheim Hills was not designed and is not prepared for a major fire. Deer Canyon, with its primary exit onto Santa Ana Canyon and its planned emergency exit onto the same exact road, doesn't make any sense, and it's definitely not ready. We cannot sustain another major development on Santa Ana Canyon Road. The evacuation time is already far too long. There are approximately 60,000 people in Anaheim Hills. We cannot add another 24 minutes to an already too long evacuation time. Thank you.
Can I have the Linda Lewis, Susan Harker, and Mary Ellen Wynn please
I'm
line
Linda
up?
Chapman.
Yeah,
Linda's,
Linda-
got a lot of Lindas here, huh?
yeah, there's also a Linda Morel. Is Linda Morel?
Yeah, she's skipping.
Okay,
Linda Chapman.
very good. Go ahead.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. This is a very passionate topic. As you can see, a lot of people that would be here probably aren't right now because we tend to be on high alert as soon as a fire comes up. This is one of the apps I have, Fire Watch. My husband's staying home because we have animals to evacuate. I live on the Mueller Loop as well. The last fire, the Canyon 2 fire, you know, being in Corona, you know, the next thing we know, it's at Savvy Ranch. I remember when we were at the last meeting, the developer was saying, oh, no fires have been in Deer Canyon, but in reality, that wasn't true. The embers had traveled and landed right behind islands, and several of my neighbors got out with their floor mats and literally put the embers out, thus saving Deer Canyon Park in 2017. I'm a little concerned with our officials here. I know that you guys are doing the best job you can, but I really think you need to have the community input, be meeting with parents and residents, because I feel like you're really missing a lot of information that is out there from a firsthand basis. This Titanic approach of evacuation isn't sitting well with me, that we're gonna have people shelter in place. That's moronic at best. And just so you have the numbers to really think about this in your mind when you talk about saving lives, okay, right now our Rancho's at 1,125 students. They would need 22 and a half buses. Anaheim Hills has 600 students. They need 12 buses. Running Sprees has 642. They'll need 13 buses. And Canyon Rim needs 510, has 510 students, and they would need 11 buses, okay? That's 59 buses before you even get to Canyon High School. If you had to do Canyon High School, that would be another 44 buses. That would be 103 buses. I don't know that our district has 103 buses and drivers on the ready to get our kids out. And then like you asked about, what about our private schools? What about the preschools? What about all those other kids? And as we saw, there was a shooting in Georgia this past week, and parents were told to stay away because the officials had it. But I saw parents climbing walls and running to get to their children. And you know what? I'd be doing the same thing. You're not going to tell me, wait and trust the officials to save my child. I will be their first line of defense. And you can't stop all these parents. You don't have enough police in this city to stop those parents from saving their kids. Thank you.
Linda Lewis is next. Can Chris Cugno, did I say that right? And Tammy Hill, please line up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to us. We really need to be heard, like all the ones before me. I was evacuated in the fire in 2017. It took us 3 hours to get out. I lived on Goldfinch at that time. I now live in the Mueller Loop. It is horrible. We only have one way in and one way out. How do you expect us to get out of the Mueller Loop along with El Rancho Charter School and buses trying to get in and out? It's going to be impossible, especially with maybe 1,000 more people coming into our community. It's just really, really frightening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Susan?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for listening to us. It's funny that it takes something like this to get us all started on something. I live in Anaheim Hills and have been a resident for over 30 years. I live on the corner of Old Bridge Road and Fairmont. Because of where I live just above and a little bit west of El Rancho. I am also the current president of a women's group in Anaheim Hills called Ebell Club of Canyon Hills. Today we had a meeting. I presented to all of our members the schedule of El Rancho, because if you're there in the morning or when they get out and they have a different schedule, if you go at that time, you will never get to your place, to wherever you're going in enough time because the roads are packed. I agree with the ladies that have talked before me because I know how these parents are. They all pick up their kids. There's not a bus running. We don't have a bus going up and down that hill. We don't have a bus going Old Bridge. Old Bridge is considered one of the evacuation roads, and yet it is only 2-lane, and if the cars are parked on the street in front of their residences, you can only get through with 1 car. And I have a Suburban, and I can't get through a lot of times because you're afraid you're going to hit their rear view mirrors. So taking into consideration, I love the work that you've all done, but you really don't know unless you're there and you see it. And we do. So you've got to listen to us and you've got to tweak it. And now we want more people coming in. We don't have the accommodations to do it both in an earthquake or a fire. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ellen and Doug, thank you, Doug.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for working on the plan so hard and for being here willing to listen and accept input from us. I think all of us who have lived through the evacuations are scared, and we are grateful that you're working on plans, but I think we don't see what's very different yet. And we don't see the infrastructure to support what existed 6 years ago in 2018, let alone what we're going to need if other developments come into the area. And I know it's not just our area. There are other areas outside of Anaheim Hills that are putting up large housing areas too that are going to be impacting the freeway, going to be impacting Santa Ana Canyon. I'm not sure whether any of you have ever driven along Santa Ana Canyon, particularly on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon, but it's people trying to avoid the freeway. So God only please help us if a fire came on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon. People have already talked a lot about the schools. I'm really concerned about the school situation. It was a horribly frightening situation the last time. Even if we took all of the kids to Orange High School or over to Vineyard, that's just a farther distance on the road with the buses that we don't have enough of. And all those parents are still going to be going to pick up those kids. They're going to go to where their children are. They need help. They're going to go to the assisted living facilities and to the nursing homes because that's where their families are. Those are the people they want to save. So I just am so grateful you're working on this, but I see that we don't yet have enough fire, enough police. We don't have enough schools for us to build the situation out to where it's safe for evacuations yet. And I hope that this will be part of your considerations as you go forward in trying to keep Anaheim a beautiful area and a wonderful place to live. And thank you for your time. Keep working.
Thank you, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Chris Cuno. I live on the Moeller Loop. We hear words and phrases like we've over-evacuated. We talk about capacity, mitigation strategies, shelter in place. All of these things add up to a lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure of the roads on San Ana Canyon Road. If you live near where you need to exit onto San Ana Canyon Road, you'll see there's not enough infrastructure, there's not enough roads. A lot of people talk about that. From a planning commission perspective, somebody should be doing some sort of assessment, traffic study. Seems like there's a failure there. I assume that since we're talking with the fire folks here, I'm sure they've, with their mitigation techniques of sheltering in place and evacuating targeted things and, somehow, not allowing traffic to come in. If you're not inside and you need to evacuate, you need to somehow call your neighbor. I doubt there's cellular infrastructure to be able to handle all the chaos of all of the phone calls. And am I supposed to distribute my house key to all my neighbors so they can all come and get my cats out or something like that, or my parents? I don't think that's going to work. That's just a failure of infrastructure planning. I'm sure the fire department's given a recommendation to the city, right, based upon their plan of we can't evacuate all the people at once. There's plenty of room on Santa Ana Canyon Road to expand. There's all sorts of eucalyptus trees. There's horse trails on the sides. There's all kinds. It's beautiful, and I'd hate to see that go away. But from a safety perspective, it needs to be widened. So someone needs to look at better planning for our roads. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Tammy Hill.
Hi, I'm Tammy Hill. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and what you do. As the gentleman before me was talking, in 2017, I'm sure we learned a lot of lessons that people couldn't evacuate in time. A lot of people were stuck. A lot of people were running across the hills because they couldn't get onto Santa Ana Canyon. It was too congested. Besides creating these zones for people to shelter in place, have we talked about infrastructure? Have we talked about expanding Fairmont? Have we talked about another way for us to get out? Currently, those that live between Weir Canyon and Imperial, those are only two ways out. That's it. So we can't go to the east, unfortunately, I'm sorry, because that's typically where they come from, so we all have to go to the west. So in order to get everybody out, we all have to go on the same road. You gentlemen have to use the same road to use your equipment to save us and to help us. So how are we all going to share that road together? That's my question to you gentlemen. You also say that we should shelter in place. I've been in 2 home fires. I've been evacuated twice living here in Anaheim Hills, and I have relatives that are in the fire department. Smoke kills people. So you say if the fire is not upon you, you're right. You may not be able to evacuate, right? It's the smoke. Step outside right now. We are surrounded by fire. Azusa, Big Bear, Trabuco Canyon. It's horrible to breathe in. Most people will die in a fire from smoke. So I'm sorry, I have to disagree. I don't think we need to shelter in place. I think what we need is a better infrastructure. So you all know the saying that when your cup is full of water, you can't pour any more water in, it overflows. This is the same theory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doug?
First of all, thank you for your time, and yours also, gentlemen. Tammy and I have lived in Anaheim Hills since 1996. Since then, we've had to evacuate twice, once in 2008, once in 2017. In 2017, it took me 90 minutes to go 4 miles down Santa Ana Canyon. There was no left turn option as we were exiting from Eucalyptus Drive, where we live, on. If you were to go left, you'd just be in more traffic, and the light at Santa Ana Canyon and Weir backs up 3 or 4 times just on an afternoon because of existing traffic. So left is really not an option. Everybody goes west. Shelter in place, I'm sorry, is, to use the polite word, ridiculous. If there's a fire raging, you can smell the smoke, you can barely see your neighbor's house, no one's going to shelter in place. Everyone is going to get out as fast as they can. Trying to restrict people coming in to save their children, their animals, their elderly parents, which I have all of those. You can't stop me. I mean, even if there's a roadblock, I'm going to get in there in order to get my family out and get them safe. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality of it. We protect our own, we protect them first. Lahaina and Paradise, they had 2 things in common. One is the fire. The other is they both had only one way out. Santa Ana Canyon Road is one way out. It's only westbound. If there were to be any further developments in Anaheim Hills, complete the Fairmont overpass. That gives us an escape valve. It gives us an escape route to get out at least to the other side into Yorba Linda. Without that, we're all jammed. It's the repeat of Paradise and Lahaina. None of us want that on our conscience. I'm sure that no one in this room would like to see a repeat of that. Development in this area must stop until infrastructure has improved to allow people to exit safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent?
Hello. Thank you to all of you here. My dad is a retired policeman, 100% support everything you guys do. So my name is Brent Honey. So just a couple words I think that's helpful here is just some personal experience of what happened during the last fire, during Canyon Fire 2. One of the things that we're talking about today is, maybe why did the evacuation go wrong? I think it went wrong because the fire moves quickly. In all of these situations, we have wind that's blowing in extremely fast. I was working at the time in Orange on the 20th floor of a building, so I could see very clearly where the fire was. Talking to my wife, it was very far away, or so it appeared. Within about 30 minutes, she was being evacuated. During that time, you don't have a whole lot of time to think. So we live in Zone 4 of Deer Canyon, apparently. This is a dry brush canyon. Fire insurance is very expensive as it is, and many of our neighbors are being denied insurance at this stage. I think the Know Your Zone is a nice idea. Hopefully it's going to help, but if we do approve the salt development that's under consideration, I don't think it accounts for any of this and what that's going to do to the evacuation plans. We've been residents here of Anaheim Hills in this area for the last 20 years. We back up to Deer Canyon, and as such, we've been evacuated twice. We have 4 young children. During the last evacuation, we and other residents had extreme difficulty just getting out of the area to get to a safe spot. Our kids at the time were both in El Rancho Charter School as well as Canyon High School. My wife left our home when she was told to evacuate. The fire was spreading fast and uncontrollably down Santa Ana Canyon as the winds were whipping by. She left our home, made her way to Santa Ana Canyon. She was stopped basically in deadlock traffic, couldn't pick up our kids. Her van basically ran out of gas right there where the proposed development is to occur. And she was concerned as the fire got closer, basically she was just stuck in the path of the fire if the fire were to come down Deer Canyon, which thankfully it did not. I was able to leave the orange area where I was at off the city drive, make my way down here and got here faster than she could pick up our kids in order to pick up the kids. Similar to what this nice lady was saying earlier, we were one of the folks that were, as we were talking to the schools, we were hearing that the buses weren't going to get there in time, and she wanted to get there, and that's why we went down there at the time. I'm going to skip a little bit of this here, but basically, I think what we should be thinking about with this new development is really safety and liability, safety of our residents. So, I mean, overwhelmingly, the residents of Anaheim Hills do not want this development. It's an unsafe rezone of an area that with dense housing into a dry brush canyon.
Brent, your time's up.
So I think safety, it is basically the ultimate concern, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Linda, you decided to speak.
My name is Linda Merrill. I've been a resident. I've lived on Moeller Loop in Anaheim Hills for 50 years, and I've seen many fires, a lot more than probably most of these gentlemen here. And although I appreciate you guys' time, I think the thing that's lacking is they need people from the community who's actually lived through the fires, who actually lived through it. And it's nice to sit and try and plan zones and things. There's a reason we have zoning laws, because the people who developed our area saw all the difficulties of our terrain and our in and outs, and they zoned it according to what they felt our community could handle. And without changing the infrastructure, we cannot allow rezoning, because it's just going to put all of our families at extreme risk. I've been through so many fires, one fire, and every single one of the fires are not nice and clean and neat like what they're saying. They've been where they've been over in Irvine Park, and they'll say, you're fine, don't worry, and the next thing you know, they jump over, they hit over all the way over to Fairmont, and they're like, evacuate in 2 minutes. And then they'll say, there's been fires that went from Anaheim Hills and jumped over to Yorba Linda and burnt homes just here and there. There was a fire years ago which burned up on Muller Loop, and they called the fire trucks and told them to get out of there because they were going to be stuck. I've been through so many fires. Not one of the fires has gone according to where they say it's safe, you evacuate, and then 2 seconds later, that fire is in the middle of your homes. So what I think needs to happen is they have to sit down with the real people who live there, who know the streets, who've been through the fires, and come up with a plan that works, because you can't just say, don't evacuate this, shelter in place. They need to talk to the people who live there, and we need to really take seriously the situation that all our families are living in the hills, as far as the safety of our children and our families. And we have put you guys in this place to be the people that are the wall that is going to stop the danger that would come upon us by approving rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak?
I would just like to say, please protect us. You are here to protect us.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to close the workshop unless staff has anything further. We close the workshop then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you, Dan. Any updates, Scott?
I do, just real briefly. The next Planning Commission meeting on the 23rd, we will have the Mill Project. The Mill Project is 56 for-sale residential units on the former lumber mill site on Santa Ana Canyon, on Santa Ana Street, Santa Ana Canyon. We will have a 3-lot subdivision in Peralta Hills and the OC Vibe amendment to that project. So that will be on September 23rd. That's all the announcements I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I do have one thing, which is at the close of our last meeting, our office was notified that there was litigation commenced on the Veterans Cemetery approval. It was commenced, and it'll pursue the challenges that, CEQA challenges are usually undergone. I'll keep you posted.
Very good. The hearing is closed.